take a look at us later. Awesome. Thank you guys for being here. I appreciate it. I know some of you don't have a choice because it's Monday morning and this is your power up time. So I appreciate the fact that Drew and Ty and Eric have allowed me to come in and take this time. I know that attending classes sometimes seems like a drag. Seems like you should actually be out doing the work and talking to people and sharpening our saw so that we can do the best that we can for our clients is super important. So having that built into our schedule. I do the same thing. I am in classes. It's the only way that I can be better for you guys is to learn. I wish that it just would come to me through osmosis and that I already knew everything that I needed to know, but that is just not true. In real estate, we learn something new every day. Every transaction is different. Every house is different. Every CMA that you do is different. So one of the things that is a major letdown for you guys in this class is that it's not an exact science. I'm not going to be able to give you guys a formula that says this is how much money you're going to use for your adjustments on certain features. I wish I could. It would make life so much easier for everybody. So we're just going to talk through the process, and I'm going to give you guys a little bit of insight to how I look at properties when I'm trying to price. When you get through, the next 5 years and you look back, you're going to think, wow, why did I think it was so hard to price a property, right? Because it just comes with experience. It comes with just being in homes. It comes with seeing what the market's doing. It comes with knowing what the buyers are looking for. So I'm going to start off and ask you guys just a couple questions. First, for those of you that have your cameras on so I can actually see you, raise your hand if you've attended a CMA class with me before. Awesome, love it. For those of you that have attended a CMA class with me before, are you here because you want to be, or because are you here because you have to be? You want to be? You want to learn a little bit more, hear it again? Okay, awesome. So one of the other things with classes is repetition, right? When you can attend the same class, the same subject matter, and you get something different out of it each time, right? Every time you attend a class, you're not ready to absorb 100% of the information. Depends on where you are. So I appreciate the fact that you guys are here again. There may be a lot of repetitive things in this class. I think there will be, because it's the same process I go through every single time when I'm doing a CMA. And at the same time, you may have new questions, and that may help your colleagues that are here on the call so that we can go through some new ideas and activities. Does anybody have something specific that they're looking to get out of this today that you would feel like it was a win if you learned how to do one thing or had one specific question answered?
I do. I walked through a house after an open house yesterday, and they have so many. I know a lot of times upgrades or whatever don't, make it something to comp with another home in the neighborhood. But man, they did so much work. And so I said, I told them I could do a CMA to see, because they're really nervous about they want something higher than their neighbors have sold for, and their neighborhood is hot right now. So yeah. I was just looking to see maybe something I missed last time.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great topic for us to talk about.
I would also like to, I know that last time when I took this this class, it was you kind of like added something on and subtracted something because this one had this and this. I would like to know more about that and when and where to apply those additions and subtractions.
Awesome. So those are the adjustments from the subject property to the comp. Perfect. All right. Anyone else have something specific they'd like to see? Okay. So one of the things I'd like to highlight on Young's point with the upgrades, that sometimes a homeowner can do too many upgrades. They can actually over upgrade the home where they're not going to get a return back on their investment. The other piece to look out for is when it comes to the different types of financing that buyers are doing, certain types of financing, because of the appraisals, only give value to certain things. A VA appraiser does not have the ability to give adjustments on certain upgrades and certain features. And so one of the reasons that VA financing is not looked at as nicely to sellers as conventional is because VA appraisers are they limit the upper value where the seller can sell the home. So if you have a conventional loan and you have a VA loan, the seller's going to say, well, if everybody escalates, I don't think it's going to appraise. And the VA buyer has to have the right to walk away if I don't lower my my price. It's not really about the repairs or the condition of the home as much anymore, as far as whether it needs, railings or all of these extra things that come up. It's more about the appraisal. So if you have a VA buyer that is looking to get into a home that has a ton of upgrades that you're comparing to other homes, if your VA buyer has some cash that they can put down so that they can make up the difference if the appraisal doesn't come in where that escalated sales price goes to, that's how you're going to win offers, because that's what the sellers are worried about. The sellers are worried about the appraisal because they know that all the upgrades that they did are not necessarily going to come through on that appraisal. Does that make sense to everybody? They can only give credit for certain things, where a conventional mortgage, the appraiser can give more credit to that upgraded kitchen or all of the exterior features, like, the stone deck that they put in outside, or, the outdoor kitchen, or, whatever the case is. So that's where you're going to be able to help your VA buyers. Okay, questions on that piece? Awesome. I'm going to share my screen with you guys, and we are going to use Bright to get started. So if you'd like to follow along in Bright, you can. You do not have to. You can just watch what we are doing here. Everybody can see my screen? Okay, yes. Awesome. So the first thing that I'm going to do for those of you that logged in a little bit after we got the property, we are going to use a property that Andy Fan shared with us. The address is 3438 Beale Court in Woodbridge. The first thing that I do when I'm doing a CMA is I go to the tax record. I want to get some details from this tax record to see what I'm actually comparing with. This is before I even go into a house sometimes. So from the search menu, I go to public records and I type in the address, 3438 Beale. And one match comes up. All right, Beale Court. This is a townhouse. Looks like there could have been a previous listing because there's a photo in here, so that's helpful. All right. In the listing, what I'm looking for are some very specific things. I want to look for the square footage that's listed in the tax record. I want to see the year built. I'd like to see the lot size. I'd like to see the bedroom and bath count. All of these things are going to be listed in the tax record. The tax record is very important when you are doing a CMA for a seller and when you are doing a CMA for a buyer who is looking to put an offer in on a home. I don't know how many of you realize this, but you should be doing a CMA, even if it's quick, for buyers, before they decide to put an offer on a home. This is what's going to tell you whether or not the home is likely to appraise and whether or not it's a risk if the buyer wants to waive the appraisal contingency or offer to pay some difference between an appraised value and where their offer price is. So what I'm doing here is I'm scrolling down and I'm looking at the building characteristics. All right, that's where I want to go first. So I'm looking, it says the above grade finished square feet is 1296. Below grade finished square feet is 581. So that's the basement. Unfinished square feet below grade is 31. So that must be like the mechanical room or something. It says there are 3 bedrooms and 1.5 bathrooms. So I'm writing all this down. If I was doing the CMA on my own, I would probably print this tax record and make some notes on the tax record itself. But for our purposes, I'm just making notes on my piece of paper. It has a patio or deck. It tells me this right here. It tells me that it's built in 1972.
Shannon,
Yes.
I have a question here, please.
Okay.
This information tax record is pulled from the original tax record, or this is depend on the information the listing agent put?
This is the tax record that's imported from the county into Bright directly. So I went from the main page of Bright directly into the tax record. Now, if you're in a listing and there's a tax record attached to the listing, this is the same information. The listing agent isn't filling this data in, they're attaching the information from the county tax record that's imported into Bright.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so this is the tax record.
Thank you.
The other thing I'm looking at for those of you that have attended my classes before, you know that I'm looking at the tax assessment. And I'm looking at the tax assessment not to determine what the price will be of the home. I'm looking to make sure that I am comparing to homes that the county also thinks are similar, or that I am coming in the right place with my comps based on what the county thinks. The reason for this is it's a red flag if I'm coming in at a much higher price than the taxable assessment and the comp says, oh, their tax assessment, let's say the comp is assessed at 250, but their adjustments come in lower, then I know something's wrong, right? It gives me a guide to make sure that everything's in line. And if something does come in where it's off, it's skewed completely, then I know to come back and look and say, okay, what did I miss? Maybe the county's missing something. Maybe there's going to be something off. So I want to know what that is. All right, so I'm going to write 238.
Is there a general rule of thumb to like percentage delta between the two? I mean, something that maybe you look for. I mean, maybe not hard written, but
There's not. I don't look for any percentage difference. Generally speaking, the way that the counties work is they come up with a value first, and then they decide how much money they want to make in their budget, and then they come to the millage rate. So each year it doesn't really, I've never figured out, I've never taken the time because it hasn't been necessary to figure out if there's an actual percentage. They just know that they'll get a lot of pushback, the counties will, if they come with their tax assessed value close to or above where it would sell. That's a great question. Does anybody else have any questions on this so far?
Yes, Claude, I have a question.
Hi, Claude.
Yeah, like the building characteristics, how upgraded this information it is. I'm asking this in the sense that maybe this information might have been up for some time and there's some upgrade that has been done recently and then the house goes to the market.
Yeah, that's a great question. So right here, this is just basic data. Basically the shell data, if you will, of what the property characteristics are. This doesn't have much to do with the interior condition of the home. 2 weeks ago on my Ask the Broker, for those of you that were there, I talked about why the tax record was important to you. And one of the reasons I talked about that was specifically here with the square footage and the bedroom and bath count. If you are working with a buyer, from the buyer's perspective, and you're going through the home or you're looking at the listing and it says that that the home has 3 bedrooms and 2.5 baths, and this listing says there's only 1.5 baths, that's going to be a red flag to say, wait a minute, this might not have been permitted for that extra bathroom because it's not listed in the tax record. So the county gets their information almost always from the permits. And when they get the permits and they approve and finalize the permits, they are going to then update the tax records because they want to charge more money, right? Because they know that the home is put on the home, or there is a basement that's finished and it was done by the homeowner and permits were not pulled. And you'll walk into a home and you'll see, okay, the listing says it's this, but the tax record says this. Let's try to figure out where the permits are. And sometimes the county just hasn't updated it, and that's okay. The seller has to be hopeful that they kept all of their records so that it can be updated.
Okay.
Okay, great question. So from here, what I would do, well, actually, let's stop. Is there anything else on this page that you think is important to know before we go to the next screen?
Special tax,
The amount of the tax?
the special tax,
Oh, the special tax assessment. So the special tax, that may be important. Sometimes you'll see in this section where you can tell that it's in the city. So you're going to see an additional city tax. That would be important here to know, just for your client's sake, that there's additional taxes. The special tax and refuse fee, I would ask, you know, what's that for? Sometimes it's additional for some utilities and things within the county. This is not in the city, so it's not that additional tax. What else here?
Did you mention square footage?
I did mention square footage.
you did not mention lot size.
I did not mention lot size, you're right, and I wrote it down. So lot size is important, especially on single family homes. In townhomes, it is important if you're going outside of the neighborhood. Does anyone see a neighborhood listed on here? I don't see a neighborhood listed on here. Where you can find the neighborhood is going to be down here in the legal description. The legal description says Dale City. So that's actually going to be the neighborhood that comes up in the searches. When you're reading the tax record, what this is saying is that it's Dale City, lot 148, section 5. Sometimes up here, or subsection T. Sometimes this information is not all filled in. So you can read it right down here and you can tell what the information is. So sometimes it'll list a phase, sometimes it'll always list the lot, but you can read it right from the legal description from the county. So that's helpful when you're filling out listing agreements and things. So from here, what I would do is I would click on last listing and property history. Now this one sold in 2003. So I'll click on it and I'm going to see if it tells me anything. There's only one photo, so I'm not going to get much from the photo. I'm looking at the agent remarks. There's not much here from the remarks either. Doesn't tell me much about the home. So now I'm going to rely on my communication with the owner to learn about the home. So Andy, this is your potential listing. So tell us some things that you know about this home.
The hardwood floor needs to be redone, like refinished. And then there is 3 full baths. They are not permitted.
Okay.
AC unit and furnace is old.
Okay.
That's pretty much it.
Okay. So this would probably be renovation potential. The wood floors, what do you know anything about the kitchen?
The kitchen is fine. It has laminate on top, or yeah, laminate.
Laminate counters?
I think it's marble counters, actually. Laminate flooring.
Laminate floor?
Yeah.
Okay. What about appliances?
Appliances are, they're black appliances.
Okay. And what do you know about the roof and the windows?
Windows are old.
Okay.
There is in the basement, the outer pane is cracked. Probably original. And the roof has been repaired 3 years ago.
Okay. So this is, got it. All right. Does anyone else have other questions for Andy about the condition of the home?
Hi, I have one question.
Sure.
What is meant by, I heard him say that there were 3 baths, but they were not permanent. What's meant by that?
That they were not permitted. So what he means by that is that the homeowner did not go through the proper channels through the county to have the inspections done to verify that those bathrooms met code.
Okay.
Okay, so we will talk about that a little
Okay.
further. And that's something very important when you're talking to the owners, when you're going through to walking through, getting your information from them to determine what the feature set is. If they say they have 3 full bathrooms and you know from this tax record that the county only shows 1.5 bathrooms, you're going to need to get more information. As agents, we have a very high responsibility for disclosure. The sellers do not. Someone coming in to buy this home is going to make a different decision for pricing and maybe even wouldn't make a decision to buy it at all if they knew that the bathrooms were not permitted versus if they were permitted. And so we as agents have to disclose those things.
Thank you.
You're welcome. It also affects the value because an appraiser isn't going to give additional value, especially a VA appraiser, right? They're not going to give additional value for bathrooms that are not permitted. So it's something for us to be aware of when we're looking at pricing. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take us over to the search side. So we're going to do,
Can I ask a question to Andy?
sure.
Yeah, what about the exterior condition of the building? Like maybe, does it have like an enclosed area that for kids, and how is the nature of it? Is it still good? Is it habitable enough?
The backyard is
Does that really
fenced in.
influence any other thing?
The backyard is fenced in. The backyard also has a deck and a shed.
Okay.
And the deck, Claude, we could see down in the tax record. Let me get back to the tax record. So it does tell us, it gives us an idea that there's something outside.
Yeah, I see.
Now this says there's a patio. So if there's a deck, then it could be that the deck is
It's
not
like a
permitted.
floating deck. It's like a floating deck.
It's okay. So
Yeah.
they're calling it a patio. So there may have been a patio when they bought it and changed it to a deck. Do you know?
That's possible.
So that would be something to ask about as well. All right, let's go to our search screen. If it will give me the pop-up and drop down for this. Oh my goodness, thank you, Bright. There we go. Sometimes you have to be smarter than the technology. All right, from here, this is the main search screen that you use to find homes that your clients want to go out and tour. I start with as broad of a search as possible when I'm looking for comps, because I want to see the listings before I pick which ones are going to be comps, because I don't always trust what the agents put in the listings. Okay, I'm not 100% trusting when it comes to this, because it's bad data in, bad data out, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with the zip code. I'm going to come down and I'm going to change this to coming soon active, active under contract, pending and closed. For right now, I'm changing it to 0 to 60 days. Okay, 90 days would be the max. I'm going to suggest you use the most recent closed, the better. So if we end up with a lot of listings to look through, then we're going to tighten up the closed date, because that's more reflective of the current market that we're in. Does that make sense to everyone? Something that sold 6 months ago actually went under contract 7 months ago. It's a very different market from what we're in right now. And even something that closed 90 days ago went under contract 120 days ago. And that's a very different market from what we're in right now. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come down and I'm going to change this where it says structure type to townhouse. So I want end of row and interior. Andy, is that one an end unit or it's an interior?
Interior.
Interior, okay, I couldn't tell. All right, so now look, we're down to 150 matches. So we're getting better. The next thing that I do is I put in the square footage. This had 1,296 square feet above grade. I'm gonna only go on this one to 1,400 as the upper limit. And I'm gonna go down to 1,200 as the lower limit. And I'm gonna see where that puts us. We don't want to go too far outside of the range, because we want to make sure that we're comparing like kind. If we have enough comps that are very similar to this property, that's what we want to use. We don't want to go too far outside of what the property actually is, because then we have to make too many adjustments. So now we have 82.
Can I ask a question real quick?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, if the tax records, for example, I showed them what HomeSnap showed their home as, and they stated their square footage was incorrect. How, if the tax records are wrong, how do I get the correct square footage?
So I would ask them what was wrong about it, right? What was it? Did they do an adjustment or in addition to it? Did they finish more square footage after they bought it? Was it wrong when they bought it? You can talk through that with them. And here's the thing, guys. The county send out each year a letter to the homeowners that say, verify this information, right? Before they do the assessments. Tell us that all of this information we have is correct. Sometimes it's every other year, but it's very regular that they send this. The homeowners know that the tax record is incorrect. And they know that if they tell them that there's additional square footage or additional bathrooms or whatever, that they're going to have to pay more taxes. So they don't actually certify it. So when they go to sell, it does not work in their favor that the tax record doesn't reflect the true square footage. So it's a catch-22. They may have taken advantage of the lower tax for all those years, but then now when it's time to sell, they really should get it fixed. The counties do not come back for back taxes. They do not go retroactive. So they need to just get it fixed before they go on the market. So definitely ask if they've done any work to the home, or if there was something when they bought the home that alerted them that there was a difference.
Thank you.
So, you're welcome. So 82 is still a lot. So what I might do here is I might go to 30 days. We're at 60. Let's take a look. So we have a lot in here. One thing that you can also do is try to type in the subdivision or neighborhood and see if something comes up. Now remember, we didn't have anything other than when it said Dale City in the tax legal description in the tax record. So when I put in Dale City, we come down to 33 matches. That's much more reasonable. From here, I want to go to the gallery and I want to take a look and see if anything looks like it could be similar or in the neighborhood where this one is. The other thing that we can do is you can look at the map. I think I still have this up. I do. So we're going to click on the map. Nope. Cannot make it any bigger because we got out of it already. We can look at the map and see where the property is compared to these addresses. You want it to be as close as possible, right? So why don't we do this? Why don't we look?
Shannon, is there a reason you didn't do a radius search, you know, half mile, quarter mile, whatever from the property?
Yes, I don't do radius searches.
Okay. Why is that?
Because most buyers don't do radius searches when they're going to look for a home. And so I take the approach that I want to see everything that a buyer would see if they were going out to search. And they're not doing a radius, they're doing a neighborhood or more of a geographic location. They might do a radius search off of some other location, but not a radius from the subject property. So let's do Google Maps. Put in the address and look for some of the homes that are around this so we can have it up next to each other. All right. So we have Beale Court, we have Barksdale. That was one that we saw, right? Whoops. It unshared my screen. That wasn't very nice of it. All right, you guys seeing my screen?
Yeah.
Okay. So the way that I look at this is I want to see what else would the buyers be looking for if they're coming in to look at my property. So Barksdale was one that's right off of Beale Court. You can look at this map for a second. See, right here. So it looks like that's the neighborhood that would be the most comparable based on the map. So anything that's on Barksdale Street or Beale Court, I'm going to want to grab because that's where we're going to have the appraiser is going to look. So what I may end up doing, depending on how many of these listings come up right around there, I may go back 60 days and look right there and see what those listings are. So let's do this. So we have 1, 2, 3. That's it. So I'm going to go back to the criteria and I'm going to go to 60 days and see what we can come up with right there. We still only have 3. Let's take a look at those 3 and see how they compare. So I click them and I want to narrow my search and just look at those for a minute. So Barksdale Street, 14,725, Barksdale Street has 1,260 square feet. It's a 3-bedroom, 1.5 bath. Now let's go back to the permit issue for a minute. My suggestion for anyone who has a property that is going to list something that is not permitted is that you do not use the unpermitted item in your value. So in this case, even though there are 3 full bathrooms, I'm going to say that it is best to err on the side of caution and still price it as if it was a 3-bed, 1.5 bath. Does that make sense to everyone?
Yeah.
Okay, unless the seller is willing to go back to the county and do the work required by the county to get the permits through, it is best for it to be listed in the listing that there are the 3 full bathrooms, 2 of which are unpermitted, and note that it is being priced comparable to the 3-bed, 1.5 baths. All right, this one is an interior unit, so that's good. It's built in 1971. Ours is built in 1972. This is an end unit, 3-bed, 1.5 bath. This is a split foyer. This does not have 3 levels. It does not have a basement. So it's a very different floor plan. So I don't know that this one would carry as much weight. This one right here is 1,224 square feet, 3-bed, 1.5 bath. It does not have a basement. It's only 2 levels. So again, it's a different floor plan. So we could do an adjustment for that if we determine what the difference is in value that a buyer would pay for something with a basement. So let's go back for a minute. Let's go back to our.
The first one has a basement. Why don't you look at it?
Well, it does, and we will look at this.
Okay.
Remember, we want to do the least amount of adjustments. So from here, we can also look at a map and see where all of these comps landed on the map. I have those 3 checked because they're in the right location. So we can look and see what's close by that a buyer might also look at if they were looking at these. So they might look across the street at Cranmer Mews. So let's click that one. This one's pretty close as well, Dorian Drive. So let's look at this one. We want more closed units than active or under contract, because closed shows what someone was willing to pay. And that's also what's going to carry the most value with the appraiser. Let's see. Let's just grab a couple of these and come back to the list and take a look and see, all right, there's no pictures. I don't want that. Let's take a look at these ones. The new ones that we added. So this one doesn't have a basement. This one does. So I'm going to say we're going to get rid of the ones. We're going to keep this one because it's in the neighborhood. We're going to get rid of this one because it doesn't have a basement. This one has a basement, has 3 full bathrooms, and it's a little bit bigger. This one has a basement, has an additional bathroom. So I think we're a little bit better here. So now we have a better idea of what we're looking at. Get rid of this one because it doesn't have a basement, because we have an additional comp we can use. Now what we can do is click through and look at the photos real quick and get an idea of what these listings are. So wood floors, looks like fresh paint, nice new light fixtures, upgraded kitchen. So this home looks like it's had some renovations done, right? You don't have to spend a lot of time on the photos. Just look through, get an idea. Fence, brick patio, shed. Then you're going to read the comments and you're going to see, okay, what does it have? Well, it has a newer roof, newer AC unit. I don't see anything about the windows. So this definitely has some improvements. It's listed at $295 and it's under contract. It was on the market for 21 days. That's important. This one, we're going to take a look at. Click through the photos. Again, upgrades, right? It was renovated. So you can tell just by clicking through, they did the renovations that they talked about in the comments. It says new carpet in 2017. Shower was renovated in 2012, that's fine. Shingles and roof in 2007. Pipes in 2018. HVAC in 2013. So there are some of the major systems that have been renovated within the last 13 years or so. That's still fairly new on the roof. This one says new plumbing, new roof, new hardwood floors. Let's take a look at those photos. Okay, so we're comparing basically everything is renovated that we're comparing with. Our listing is not renovated. So we're going to have to make adjustments for that. This one says recently installed countertops and in move-in condition. But if you notice, it doesn't say anything about the systems. in the comments. So it has cosmetic renovations. Now that HVAC does not look like it could be too old from the photo, but you never know. So what I do in this case, if I can't tell, it doesn't look like everything was renovated as far as the cosmetics. I'm going to click into the history of the listing, and I'm going to look and see when that seller bought it, was there anything listed? Nothing. New carpet, new appliances, professionally painted walls. Great. Let's go to the one before. I want to know if there's anything about windows or roof, right? Because that's what all of the other ones have. Roof, HVAC, they have systems that have been replaced. Nothing. So it may be safe to say, oh, this was a short sale, so I'm sure that there weren't. So you get how that works, right? How you can go back to all the listings and see whether or not something was done, even if it's not listed in your specific comp. From here, what we do is we check all of the ones that we want to take with us into the CMA page. So once I clicked on all of those, these activated down at the bottom, and CMA is one of the choices. So from here, I always put myself as the contact. I don't put other clients as the contact. I want to send it to myself first. So today's class. And then we pick the pages that we want. Well, I want to do price adjustments. You can add, there are so many different pages that you can add in here. Look at all of these. If you have a client who really wants data, you can give them as much data as they want. If you have a high D seller who just wants a snapshot, just give them the price adjustments. But if you have an S or a C client who really wants to see everything, you can give them as much as you want. But I like just the price adjustments. So that's all we're going to take. If you want to take a map, you can take the map also to show where everything was in the location. From here, you pick the subject property. Now, there's a couple of ways to do this. If we had written down what the previous listing was, the listing number, you can autofill it from there. You can also autofill it from the tax record. So you can put in the tax ID number, or you can manually put the information in. So I think we don't still have that. No, we don't. You can type the subject field manually or autofill. Andy, do you have the tax ID number from that, or the previous listing number that we can fill it, or we can just do it manually?
I don't have it in front of me. Let me see here.
That's all right. I will pull it up right here.
See tax ID number.
So you can also search it right in here. So I just pulled it right in here from the search. Did you guys see how I did that? It was right underneath where you could just type it in and autofill, or, you know, for either one, right underneath it says you can do a property search or a tax ID search. Since there wasn't very much information in the last listing, I just did the tax record to have that autofill, okay? So here you can add any additional information that you would like to. You can correct anything that might not be correct from the previous listing. And then here, you can add custom fields for things that you want to do adjustments on. So I have these custom fields added already. So view, townhouse type, interior or end unit, yard, so is it fenced, condition of the home, were there renovations, right? So in this one, it's an interior. I'm going to type that in. They have a fence and deck, and the condition needs reno. Anyone have any questions on this part before I go into the next section? We good
No,
so
but
far?
I'll have some after.
Okay, no worries. All right, everything's in there that I want to have in here. So if you pulled in from the listing, if you were doing something from a recent listing and there was a seller subsidy, you would put that in here because that's part of your adjustments. Okay, a seller concession. All right, now we're gonna go to the comps. These are the comps. Awesome. Now we're gonna go make adjustments. This is the default view that you will get. I don't understand why it's the default view. It really doesn't do much. So I click change to detail view, and this is where you get to compare everything side by side. Now, when Alicia was asking about the, you add things, you subtract things, how do you do that? This is where there is no specific formula for how you decide what the value is of something. It depends on the neighborhood. It depends on the type of home. It depends on what market we're in. What are buyers willing to pay for and what are they not willing to pay for? And sometimes it's just a guess on what they're willing to pay for. There is a bit more rhyme or reason on appraisals and how much they're going to give for an end unit versus an interior unit, for garages versus not. On square footage, I see anywhere between $30 and $60 a square foot. As far as the price adjustments, when it's something as small as this, on the square footage adjustment, I don't do any sort of adjustment on those at all. And again, you want to try to find a home that is very close to your subject property so that you have to do the least number of adjustments. Does that make sense to everybody? If your subject property does not have something that the comparable property does, okay, so let's say in this case, our subject property needs renovation, our comparable property already did renovations. The comparable property has to sell off the value of their renovations to bring them to a similar condition as our property. So they have to subtract the value of all the renovations they did and basically get rid of everything that they did in order to bring them into a like kind property. Does that make sense to everyone? If our property had a fence and a deck and the subject and the comparable did not, then the comparable would have to buy a fence and a deck to make them similar. So that would be a positive adjustment. So here, the renovations, I think, are substantial. So we would have to determine what are buyers willing to pay and what are they not willing to pay. And I'm not sure that we quite know that yet. So I'm going to wait on this adjustment and I'm going to come back because I want to go through all of these for a minute. So this one, yes, was there a question?
Yes. Is it okay now or after you?
Go ahead.
Okay. Because I was showing a property in sterling,
Mhm.
and the listing shows that the upgrades cost the seller 118K. And it's beautiful. I can imagine that really they put 118K in the renovations. But how to deal with this with the comms? I mean, it's a huge number.
So that number is not relevant
Mhm.
because if all of the other comps look similar to what that property is, then you're going to get your value, right?
Right.
You don't, the amount of money that the seller paid is not
Right.
relevant
Mhm.
to the value of the renovations. That's why you compare it to a similar
Mhm.
property.
And
Okay.
with the CMA, Shannon, with the CMA, we are comparing closed properties only, or we compared the active and under contract too, because
So you want to
the
use
bank
more,
is
you want to use more closed properties. So I use all three, and the closed
Mhm.
properties carry more
Mhm.
weight. An active under contract
Right.
property or a pending property shows you what buyers were willing to make an offer on. At a certain price, a buyer was willing to raise their hand and say, I'm willing to pay this. An active property is telling your seller what buyers are not willing to pay a certain amount of money for.
Mhm.
So that's helping you to guide where your list price goes.
Right. Thank you.
Sure. So here, this property at 3527 Coxcomb Mews had a seller subsidy of $7,500. So here, when they close it to $8,500, they actually close it to $8,500 minus $7,500. So we have to subtract that from the value because the adjusted sale price is really $273. Does everybody see that? So if there is a concession, you're going to subtract that from the sale price because their net sale price is what matters. This has an additional full bath that was permitted. I generally give on a full bath, I'm going to give about $7,500 for that. The bathrooms are very close to the actual cost of what it would be to put in a bathroom. So I'm going to have them sell that full bathroom, get rid of it completely. They have an additional half bath. I'm going to have them sell the half bath for $5,000. So now when you sell that feature, it brings them back in line with what our property is. On the square footage, we're relatively close. There's no adjustment that needs to be there. This home is a lot newer. At this point, I'm not going to do any adjustment for that because there's going to be adjustments on the renovations themselves. So we don't need to do an adjustment on the age. Is everybody with me on that? So this had substantial renovations as well. So I'm not yet ready to make a determination on the value of the renovations because I know the last closed unit that we have in here did not have substantial renovations. So I want to see what really the difference was. Again, a seller subsidy. So here in Dale City, these buyers are getting seller subsidies. They're getting concessions. Something to note. Bathrooms. Oh, I think I did that. Oh no, I didn't. I did it in the right place. Sorry, I thought I did the bathrooms in the wrong place on that. All right, this says it has 3 full bathrooms. Again, ours has the 3 full bathrooms, but they're not permitted. So we're going to price it like it doesn't. So we're going to get rid of $15,000 in bathrooms. They have to sell their additional bathrooms. Here we go on the age again. I'm not going to make an adjustment because there's going to be adjustments here for the roof and the floors, all the plumbing. Okay, they're coming down to 269. Now this is the one that didn't have as many renovations. Again, another subsidy. Look at that. So we need to be consistent with on our adjustments. We need to make sure we're consistent. So this comes to 258.5 with just those basic adjustments. With a couple of renovations. This is 269 with major renovations. 260 with some pretty major renovations. Now this one's 295 with major renovations. So this is very interesting to me that you would have this one under contract. What this tells me is that the location on the other side of the street, remember when we were looking at this was the only one that was on the same side of the street. I think that was Dale Boulevard, right? Were we on Dale Boulevard? Yeah, on the same side of Dale Boulevard. So that actually tells me that the side of Dale Boulevard where our subject property is commanding a higher price than the other side. Do you guys see that? What do you guys think about that? Does anyone else notice that? It's Andy, have you done the CMA yet on this?
Not as detailed as yours. I did my own type of estimate, and I did estimate about 260.
Okay. What did you notice anything about the difference between the either side of Dale Boulevard?
I didn't focus on the other side because they are much newer.
Okay. So it's interesting that this side is older and seems to be commanding a higher price. The days on market here is 21. So it's possible that they're not going to get 295 for that. Where you look at these, this was five days on market, 5 days on market. Let's get to the other one. 5 days on market. So those were all 5 days on market.
So I know with that other one with the 21 days is because they have a tenant and they were particular about their time.
Okay. So it was hard to show it.
Right.
Yeah. So that's good to know. Those are all good things to know. So you came in about 260, which honestly, I think I would come in around there as well, even though these with renovations are still coming in around 270. So when I'm comparing and just looking at that trend that shows the one side, those three are still coming in. They're all much lower and they're all on the other side, but this one at 295, I would give it 45,000 maybe in adjustments. I might come in at 250. So one of the things that is super important when we're looking at pricing strategy, because that's why we're doing CMAs, right? We're looking for two things. We're looking to see if a home's going to appraise, and we're also looking to see if buyers are going to come through the door. In this price point, the buyers are absolutely looking in the $25,000 increments. So if you put a home on at 260, you're getting 275 and under buyers, right? You're missing all of the 250 and under buyers, where the 250 and under searchers might be able to pay 260, and they might be willing to pay 260. Because if you generate enough interest because you're priced a little bit more aggressively, then you get the buyers to do things that they wouldn't normally do, like waiving, the right to negotiate for repairs on an inspection, or agreeing to pay a little bit over for an appraisal, things like that. Or they just want to, because inventory is so low, they're looking a little bit below where they can qualify for, because they know they have to escalate. Does that make sense to everybody? So the last thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to click finish here. And I'm going to show you what the report looks like. So this looks very similar to what a report would look like from an appraiser. You have the subject property here. Now, if we had a different situation where we had to do a lot of adjustments, all the adjustments would come down right here. So you would see all of the adjustments on the side. And it would give you the adjusted price that these homes would have sold for had they been exactly the same as your listing. So I didn't go back and adjust for the renovations on these, but you can tell that it's going to come in around that 250 mark if I adjusted myself for these renovations based on what I was looking at. All right, I'm going to stop sharing for a minute and let you guys ask some questions on where we are right now.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
I went along with you and did for this neighborhood. I mean, it had, and I did 90 days, and then my results, I did this last night too, so I was kind of on track, but HomeSnap said 535. So that's what I said to they said, what do you think? I mean, we put 60,000 in this, and I did say what you said. I said kind of like, I understand you did a great job, but that is, doesn't mean you're going to get that. And they go, oh, we understand. But I only have one active in this within the 90 days. Is it, I don't want to say fair, but going out of the neighborhood, maybe outside of the subdivision, is that fair to do those kind of comps when the neighborhood is so busy? I mean, they had like 15 closes in the last 90 days.
Yeah, so I wouldn't, this is what I would do. I would use the closed as carrying more weight. If you need to have a talking point for clients, you can go outside of the neighborhood, and this is what I would do. If they have an idea in their head, which they do, because they've been on Zillow, they've been everywhere, right? The sellers have an idea of where they want to sell. Go on and do a search at that price point and show everything else that is on the market at that price point, and show how their home compares to what's listed at that price point. Okay, so if Andy's client said, I want to sell at 275 or I want to sell at 300, what I would suggest to Andy is that he go in and he do a search for 275 or 300,000 for all of the active properties, and then see what comes up in that price point and say, okay, this is what your home needs to look like to command that price. Are you willing to do that? Right? So it's not just you using the comps that have sold that are exactly like what the subject property is. It's also then going that extra step and saying, okay, I understand that's the price that you were looking for. Let's see what's out there that the other buyers that are in that price range are going to see when they search for that price. And let's see how your home compares. And you can have that conversation with them and say, okay, how does your kitchen compare to this one? How does your square footage compare, right? You're asking them questions so they can self-discover that their home is not the same, and that if they were a buyer, they would choose the other property, right? Because of XYZ, because it might be bigger. It might have, different renovations. It might be in a different location. So that's another technique that I use.
Okay, and then HomeSnap. I know that we talk a lot about, Zillow and those third-party websites aren't always, current on the information. If HomeSnap is incorrect, and I know you touched base on the tax records being incorrect, but the HomeSnap value says 535, and they were just so shocked by it. Is HomeSnap not a CMA, I understand, but is it pretty accurate when determining home values?
So I'll be honest, I don't use HomeSnap.
Okay.
So I don't have an answer to that. I can take a look at a few properties and come back and give you an answer to that. But I don't use HomeSnap for CMA purposes, for value purposes, just as I don't use Zillow, other than knowing what my clients might be looking at so that I'm prepared before I go in to have a conversation with them.
Okay. And lastly, you said something about the VA loan. If the people that I spoke with yesterday, they are under a VA loan right now. So it depends on the type of loan that the buyer would get in order to do a correct CMA, or, I mean, can you explain that again? Because I want to be able to, because they mentioned that.
Yep. Yep, absolutely. So certain adjustments for renovations, the appraisers that are doing VA appraisals cannot give extra value to renovations, right? So while we know that buyers are going to pay more for certain types of renovations or certain types of features in a home, appraisers cannot give adjustments for that when it's VA. It's very standard, very basic appraisal criteria that a VA appraiser can use. And so that's the difference when we talk to our clients about what types of renovations they're going to do and how much money they're going to put in to the home, and whether they're going to be overspending for what the neighborhood is. Remember, the banks and the appraisers actually, for the most part, set the upper limits of what buyers are willing to pay. There are some buyers that do have the cash and they are willing to pay the difference in circumstances, but that's the minority. It's not the majority, right? The majority of buyers don't have that money, and the majority are not willing to pay above the appraised value. They're looking for the bank and for the appraiser to set that limit so that they are not, quote unquote, overpaying, even though we know that the value of a home is what a buyer is willing to pay for it. That's the value of a home. So we have to just be careful when we're consulting our buyers, when we're consulting our sellers, right? Sellers don't need to be afraid of VA loans completely. They just need to make sure that they're accepting an offer from someone who has the ability to get to the closing table. That's all it is. And a seller needs to understand that certain repairs may or may not need to be done, that this is not a seller's market where you can just have a home that has been neglected for years and think that you're just going to put a sign in the front yard and 100 people are going to come in and say, we want to buy your home and we're going to pay top dollar for it. That's not the kind of seller's market that we're in. So I don't think that it's a problem for VA buyers all the time. I think it's just a matter of how the offers are structured and that the expectations are set properly for our buyers and sellers on that.
Thank you.
You are welcome. My goodness, I think the world knows that I'm teaching you guys today. I cannot tell you how many phone calls and I have gotten while we've been on the phone, and I'd much rather be talking to you guys. What other questions do you guys have? I know we're past the hour. This is a class that really could be done for 3 hours probably, and I know that makes everybody's head hurt when I say 3 hours. So we're at about 1 hour and 15 minutes right now, so I don't want to keep you too long, but I do want to answer your questions. So what else can I help you with?
I have, and I don't want to like make this class go longer than it needs to, but when you put in the adjustments, when you like sold the comps, how did you know to put $7,500 and $5,000 where you put it? Is it just experience or your area? That's not everywhere, right? Like,
So 7,500 for a full bath and 5,000 for a half bath are pretty standard when I'm doing comps in this DMV area, because that's kind of the lower limit of the cost to put in those bathrooms. And to have bathrooms put in, that's what buyers are generally looking at when they're deciding whether they'll pay more or whether they will pay less, whether they're going to not want the home. So that's why I use those. And that is just experience on that. There's no rhyme or reason as far as like, something that an appraiser gave to me and said, hey, this is what my values are. If you get your hands on copies of appraisals, if you're working with buyers and the buyers are willing to share those appraisal reports with you, take a look at what the appraisers are using as adjustments and when they're adjusting. You'll be surprised at how little they're adjusting. They're not adjusting very often, even in conventional. They're not. I'll see things come through where they do the condition C1, C2, C3, C4, right, for the condition, and I'll see things where I disagree with the condition, but as long as it appraises, right, as long as the deal goes through. So there are some things that are just, they're not set in stone as far as this is the value. It really does have to do with the changing of the time and what buyers are willing to pay and what is important to them, right? There are certain features in newer homes that I personally think builders didn't talk to the right focus groups. They're not having bathtubs in master bedrooms, right? Or master bathrooms, or even the space, right? Where this was a Van Meter thing a couple of years ago where there wasn't even the space to have that option. Well, that's going to come back, I think, to hurt some homeowners where they didn't care, right? Because that specific buyer didn't care to have the bathtub. But I think most buyers overall, it's that idea that the bathtub is there if they wanted it, right? Same thing with fireplaces. I also think that, egress in basements, there's certain things that are deal breakers for some that end up giving a lot more value when you come down to it. So it depends on who the buyer pool is. There's a much bigger difference between a 2-bedroom townhouse and a 3-bedroom townhouse on that bedroom adjustment, right? Than there would be between a 4-bedroom and a 5-bedroom on a single family home, right? So just because it's a bedroom doesn't mean that it gets the same adjustment.
thank you.
Shannon?
You're welcome. Yes, Mary.
What about the deck?
What question about the deck do you have?
I mean, I'm putting now an offer on a house, a townhouse without a deck. So how much I put a deck?
So that's another one where I would look to find other homes that may not have had a deck. I think depending on the area, that could be a $15,000 to $20,000 adjustment. Because there will be buyers that just don't want to buy a home that doesn't have a deck. That's gonna send buyers away completely from even looking at a home. And those are the types of adjustments that have to be larger, because if you want a buyer to come in and it's that opportunity cost, right? Where they have to spend the time and the extra effort. It's not just the dollar amount on how much it's going to cost to put the deck in. It's all of the effort that goes with it. So you have to think about making it much more appealing. The same thing with renovations, right? Why do you think investors look for deals, right? Investors are looking to get something below the market value because of that opportunity cost and that risk. because they're spending the money, they're taking the time, they're taking the risk. That's why it comes in a little bit lower. These are great questions.
And we have the chance to discuss this with the listing agent when we put the offer, if there is no offers in hand. I mean, I need to ask for some seller subsidy, but because not to have a deck, can I explain this to the listing agent that my buyer loved the house, but he wants to add a deck in the future, and this will cost him that amount of money?
So, okay, so that's a very important point. When you're working with buyers have the tendency to walk through a home and say, okay, I want to change this and this is going to cost X amount of money. And I want to add this and it's going to cost X amount of money. And then they take the list price and they want to reduce the list price by how much money they think they're going to have to invest in the home or ask for seller subsidy. The important thing to remember is that there are agents out there that are trained, like you guys, to price the home for what it is. So if the home was priced in comparison to other homes that don't have decks, then the seller may not be receptive to taking an offer that has a subsidy attached to it or a reduced list price because they have already priced it lower than the homes in the neighborhood that do have decks. So it's very important to know the neighborhood, know the comps, talk to your clients about that, because if it's already at a quote unquote discounted price based on that, your client might already be getting a deal.
Right.
And if they're not, if they priced it like it had the deck and like it had all of these other things, then it is a great idea to have that communication with the listing agent, because when the listing agent presents the offer, it's helpful for them to be able to tell the seller why the offer came in where it came in.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Buyers watch too much HGTV, right? And so it's our job in our buyer consultations and as we're walking through with them to sort of bring them back to reality, right, as much as we can, and help to set their expectations and ultimately get them the house, right? And sometimes they try to sabotage themselves. So, all right, any last questions before I let you guys go? Because I know some of you will be joining me in a couple of hours on our favorite bat channel right here to do some more DocuSign playing around. Yay, I know, Sherry, I love you. Alicia, yay. You guys make me feel so good about all these silly classes.
We're so grateful, really, we are.
Well, I'm so grateful to you guys. One of my favorite things is teaching. I could sit behind the computer and click through all of the compliance stuff all day long, but you guys make it worth it because I get to hang out with you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, friends, I will let you go. If anybody wants to practice a CMA and send me a CMA that you practice, I'm happy to take that address and do my own and then compare and send you notes. I really feel like that's the best way to just get used to it. All right, guys, I will see you back here. Some of you, all of you, any of you at 1 o'clock.
Thanks, Shannon. Appreciate it.
Thank
you.